Democrat officials' mind-blowing reaction to James O'Keefe.
Yes,
that the
that's the right one.
All right, I'm right around 3 minutes and 18 seconds. Let me see if we can bring this in.
Said that I had done all types of felonies. Turns out none of that was true. We filed complaints today with the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office, so we're going to hopefully get a correction here.
He's walking into the office. We don't have the video up, although we could have done that had we planned it.
Yeah, that would have been a little trickier to get that in with the Ustream.
Would you mind correcting the fact that you said I committed a felony? We filed complaints today with the Department of Justice and ethics complaints with the DOJ.
She's walking out of the office, walking away from me.
Could you please correct your statement that I committed a felony, ma'am? Could you please correct your statement that I committed a felony?
And she's still walking.
We're going to get all these U.S. attorneys disbarred for their conduct. We filed more complaints.
Just keeps on walking, huh?
Oh yeah, she doesn't dare.
Sue you for defamation, slander per se, ma'am.
Maybe she's calling her lawyer.
Man, massive corruption in the Department.
She's probably
of
calling the
Justice
police.
here in Louisiana.
Yeah,
they all
And-
resigned in disgrace.
And the interesting thing about it is that
And you're part of it if you don't correct the record. We're asking you to apologize, or you're going to face a defamation lawsuit.
I mean, the people always say
Kirsten.
It's Ali. You can turn around.
that's good. That's where it ends right there. People always say, why do you sue these people for defamation? And first of all, because I get money out of it. That's the first thing. I actually have gotten pretty sizable settlements. So you would do it too if you're going to get $20,000, $30,000.
You have legal bills. You have, I mean.
And number two, no one. And this is. I would challenge. There are very few organizations that get defamed to the extent. I mean, we're not talking about, bloggers just saying their opinion. These are respected political institutions and mainstream newspapers who report that you are a felon when in fact you are not. That is a willful disregard for the truth, and it's legally it's libel, or in this case it would be slander, but libel per se. So we are engaged in legal battles against these people, and in just like with the sort of the Pigford scandal and the Shirley Sherrod incident, where that kind of led into a bigger story. I didn't know what I was walking into down there 5 years ago, but it turns out all these people, all these U.S. attorneys, are corrupt, and they're proven to be corrupt, and they need to be brought to justice.
That's awesome. All right. Anything else going on down there? I know there's a lot that's been happening, but this is the big story.
Well, that's
the
what
Landrieu race, of course, is today. We were talking about that on the phone. She's down 30 points, not expected to win.
30 now, is it?
Was that what you said? 30?
30.
30.
Yeah. Last I saw was 24 by a Republican pollster, because the Democrat pollsters won't even bother to poll anymore. They're afraid of the results.
Yeah. It's one of those things where the press has stopped caring about Landrieu, and it's about more than just Landrieu. It's about the Department of Justice or Department of Injustice. That's really. I read Cheryl Atkinson's book. What is it called? Cheryl Atkinson's book. She just wrote this book, the CBS News reporter. It's called Stonewalled.
Yeah.
And there's a whole chapter about her experiences at the Justice Department. And I was so shocked. Even me, I was outraged by what she witnessed. Have you read this book?
No, I'm going to get it.
No, it's on our list to get.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things she says about her phones were bugged and tapped and stuff, I mean, I maybe that's true, but the thing that really got me was when they refused to let her into the press conferences as a CBS News reporter because they couldn't control her narratives. And it just seemed to me like, I know they're doing it to citizens like us, but they're doing it to CBS News reporters too?
I know.
It's pretty amazing.
And she's not a low-profile reporter. So
No, she's not. And the thing is, that normally CBS, MSNBC, ABC, etc., are treated as preferred correspondents because they'll tell the administration's narrative. She got off the reservation, and they wanted to have her fired, and they wanted to shut her out because she'd tell what she saw and heard and what she inferred from it, not what they wanted her to infer from it.
That's right. And that I encourage people to read her book. I think that we can make some progress with by telling these stories. I think this is something that the left should agree that is wrong. And if they don't agree that it's wrong, then they're going to lose. They're going to lose elections. They're going to lose the culture war. They're going to lose. People are going to not have faith in. They can't be marching in the streets about justice and then railroad people they don't like. It doesn't work that way.
Speaking of which,
if you want racial justice, if you want equality, if you want opportunity, equal opportunity, all things we all want, you can't then simultaneously jail people you don't like, railroad people you don't like, slander journalists, put journalists in jail. These things are all mutually exclusive. And I think we are all interested in justice here, but let's make sure that justice is equally applied.
Yeah, thinking of jailing people they don't like, did the guy who made the video that supposedly was behind Benghazi ever get his life back and an apology?
No, we don't hear about that, do we?
No, we don't.
We don't hear about those type of stories, and those are the type of stories that need to be told. Yeah. Someone should take their camera.
And a related story in Milwaukee, when that one protester went to an event for Clinton and the mayor of it was Wisconsin actually, and this guy made national news because he was standing there with a sign and opposing, and they arrested him for being a threat to Bill Clinton. He disappeared. I tried contacting people over there, and nobody knows what happened to him. He just sort of walked off the map and was gone. He was news for a week, and he disappeared. There's nothing on. You can't Google this guy and find him.
The story is like Chris Hennigan here in New Hampshire. It's amazing what the TSA, what the American Customs did to him. Went through his phone, when in fact it was just the fact that he knew everyone in New Hampshire. He had met and he had communicated. He had reported on all these candidates, and they're going through his phone. I know what it feels like: rummaging through your things, throwing your phone on the ground, taking out the SIM card, emptying your bags. I mean, these are the types of injustices.
Yeah. How do you know all these people when I, as an American, don't know all these people? Well, this was the TSA in Philadelphia, which is a big city where you don't get to meet the politicians every day. In New Hampshire, you can meet any politician you want if you put in the effort, and he did, and I did those couple of years as well. We met an awful lot of people, and his Rolodex was deep, and he had actually spoken to and written about all of those folks.
Yeah. Yeah, and
they were resentful of the fact that he had access.
For those of you who don't know, they won't let him back in the country.
Right. They kicked him out on one of his trips back in.
They'll let Osama bin Laden into the country.
Exactly. You can dress up as Osama.
Maybe Chris Hennigan should fly into Guadalupe and then cross the Rio Grande. And maybe then the federal government would care. It's actually not a bad idea. Have a Brit go across the region there, and then suddenly they'll stop it.
He could claim to be Mexican. Maybe that would help.
We could loan him some of John Boehner's suntan lotion and a sombrero.
Or Hillary Clinton's muumuu blue dress as she walks in.
Lovely thing, yeah. All right, so let's talk about Assistant District Attorney Richard Head. We've reported about that story. Skip went with you to videotape when you went to talk to him.
You guys are the ones that actually filmed it. Yeah, you went into the Department of Justice with me a year or so ago. And what was remarkable, as I said yesterday at the event, was how there's no metal detectors at the Department of Justice here. In New York, you would never even get within 5 feet of the entrance if you had a film crew. But I just walked on his door. He came out. This is Assistant Richard Head, and he proceeded to kind of disclose things that we didn't know. That he was working with Eric Holder. That he was working with this crazy woman in New Jersey to try to get my emails and things like that. And you guys were hot on that story a year and a half ago. So now it turns out, just a few weeks ago, that one of the people poll watchers in New Hampshire was assaulted by one of Richard Head's teammates, a guy by the name of Favre.
John, I think it was John Favre.
I don't know his first name, but and then this is an altercation that hopefully people will find out more about. It's very disturbing. The trends across our country. The abuse of power by attorney generals, by U.S. attorneys.
School boards. We just had a guy on talking about the superintendent running a tyranny in a town. You're absolutely right. And of course, what you do is so important. We talked about it. You talked about it last night at Mike's house, and how important it is for people to tell the stories, and the reason why, and the focus of telling a story and making it an emotional plea like the Democrats do.
That's the thing we were talking about. We were having a conversation last night and during the day yesterday about, I believe that the left is very good at storytelling, and the right is very good at facts and logic and all of these things and reason, but there are some things that you just can't reason with people. People believe what they want to believe, particularly on hot-button issues. And education reform, you just mentioned, is becoming an issue like abortion or gun control. People are they have a family member who's in the union and then they want their money, and you have to tell the story. And what we try to do at Veritas is we did the teachers union story. We exposed the fact that the black kids were being called the N-word by the teachers because there was no accountability. They could do whatever they want. 3 years and out. 3 years, tenure for life. So that is compelling. What the filmmaker in New Jersey, Bob Bowden, did a movie called The Cartel. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene in The Cartel where, have you seen this movie, The Cartel?
I have not. I should.
Watch this movie, and there's a scene in this documentary film where the black child has to draw a lottery ticket to get out of the public school and into what he wants to be, which is in the charter school, because the charter school is not a prison system like the Newark public school. Mm-hmm. And he's crying. He's crying to his mom because he can't leave the public school system. If you want to talk about racism, now that's a great example of compelling story on why we need charter schools. And it's that type of storytelling which I'm trying to get conservatives to do more of.
You know, it's interesting. The activists like to talk about institutionalized racism, but there it is right there in the school system where, in spite of everything they try to do desegregate schools, the fact is that inner city schools are, in a lot of cities, predominantly black. They're run by the teachers' unions, which in a lot of cases are predominantly white. And the black kids can't escape. They don't want their revenue to escape and go somewhere else, the money to vote with its feet. And, we know that when Obama came in, of course, he shut down the charter school program in D.C. so that the poor black kids couldn't even draw a lottery ticket to get into the better schools. Right. Anyway, sorry.
That's exactly right. This story needs to be told, and I think what I'm seeing in my reporting and my witnessing and all the events happening in our country right now, and it's happening with me. By the way, I just got back from overseas 3 days ago for a trip. Went through JFK, and not as bad as Hennigan's experience, but the TSA guy, they put an X over my ticket. When you put your passport in the machine now, they give you a ticket, and you take the ticket up to the counter. There's an X through my face. I'm like, I've never seen this before. I went to the guy next to me, a frequent flyer, and I said, have you seen this? He said, I've never seen this before. The TSA guy takes my passport, runs down the hallway with it. I'm like, where did the guy go? And then the other TSA guy, where's your passport? I was like, I don't know. The other guy took it. And I brought into this other room, and then brought in this other room, and they dump all my stuff out of my bags. They started asking me all these questions. I work out 3 times a week, so there's a protein shake in my bag. Like, why do you drink protein? I'm like, because I work out and I like to have protein every day. Why do you have to work out? I say because I want to remain physically active, so I'm healthy. It's like, why do you? What are you, a bodybuilder or something? I mean, just is it a power trip? Is it a? Am I being targeted? The guy was, and then my girlfriend was worried about me because I'm sitting there for 40 minutes, and so I try to call her to let her know I'm okay. TSI guy says, "Don't touch your phone. You're under my control now." I'm like, "Sir, I'm an American citizen. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, if you want to, if someone tried to put heroin in my bag without my knowledge, then fine. But don't treat me like this. Like, I'm just trying to go about my business." And these power trips, these constantly these power trips, abuse of power. We get it on video. I wish I was recording it. I wish I was recording that.
That would have been awesome. It is. I mean,
that's of course, they've passed laws to make it illegal
to record
when you go through those areas.
That's right. That's right. Or they make it such that they intimidate you. And here's another story I heard. This is on YouTube everywhere. These I-10 checkpoints where they ask you if you're a U.S. citizen. One guy had the brilliant idea. When he says, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" He's like, I'd rather you just let me go about my day, and I don't want to be harassed by you anymore." He's like, "You have to answer my question." He's like, I'd rather not." He's like, "No, thank you." And the guy says, "Well, then I have probable cause to arrest you." And the guy said, "Are you using my refusal to consent, my not consenting to your search? Are you using my refusal to give up my Fourth Amendment rights as the probable cause to arrest me?" I mean, does everyone reason how circular that is? Mm-hmm. So if I don't give up my constitutional rights, then you have probable cause to arrest me. And that's the tyrant mentality. The tyrant mentality. You saw it again in Louisiana when I walked up to Jim Letton. This is the former head prosecutor on the sidewalk. This is a sidewalk. The guy is now a dean. He goes, "You are breaking the law. You are harassing me." I said, "I have a microphone in my hand. I am an American journalist, and I'm asking you a simple question. Did you leak my emails?" And he called the police on me. And instead of having the police say, "Sir, he's a journalist and he's asking you a question," they stood behind him like his mafia henchmen and said, "You all being detained, boy. Yes, you all being detained." "Why am I being detained?" "Because you got to answer our question." They arrested me for being a journalist on a sidewalk. This is not communist Russia. This is the United States of America, and they do it because they can get away with it.
And that's a lot about what you do, which is trying to get into these places and catch these people doing these things.
And to get them to do the things they think they can get away with, but they really shouldn't.
So we talked about trying to get conservative journalists and people like us, bloggers, and people with maybe more time than we have to try to get involved. I've seen you when Andrew was still alive. You guys would come out and you would do events. I think I saw you 4 times in one weekend when you guys were up here. And you talk about having the having the cojones to go out and do it. But what's the bullet list? What's the short list of what people need to get and do if they want to be out there doing this kind of activism?
That's a great question. If they want to do what we do, if they want to be out there and expose the injustice. Like I said yesterday as well, I find that before we even get to the bullet list, we have to overcome the psychological paralysis of fear that people have. It's not that hard to do it. I mean, you've got the technology. In fact, every phone has a video record HD. In fact, these phones are better than camcorders were 5 years ago. So, and you also have now you can stream it directly from your phone. See, everyone's got the technology. So technology scratched off. Technique. It's not hard to go up to someone and ask them simple questions. That's not hard. In fact, most people I find, citizens on the street, are pretty well versed in these issues. They know that the IRS is auditing people, don't they? If you lived in Washington, D.C., there's a minefield. If you live in the Beltway, a minefield of targets. Carla Dubinsky is currently employed in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. She's working in the same component that targets the New York City cops, the Ferguson police officers. She's working in the Department of Justice when she was going on the internet and anonymously blogging about defendants in Louisiana, which is against the law. All you got to do is walk up to her with your camera and say, "Are you going to resign or not? What do you think about the bar complaint?" Now, that's easy. That's easy. Anyone can do that. The problem that people have is the fear. And I sat next to I'm not going to say her name, but I sat next to a woman yesterday at the event. After the event, we were talking, and she's like, "James, I want to support you, but I'm afraid to get audited by the IRS." And I kind of challenged her a bit. I said, "Well, frankly, we have to do something, and I know that you're afraid, but you got to overcome that fear." It's like, "Well, James, there are varying degrees of courage. And I have a son. I have a son in the Army. I have my family. I can't put the stuff on the line like you can." And that's, I don't know how to respond to that. But that's a question that people need to answer for themselves, and I don't know how to answer that. People, it's not the technology and the scripting and the ideas. People are just afraid to put themselves out there for fear of retaliation. And that, I don't know how to. Let me ask you. Let's make this an open conversation. How do we deal with that?
That is tough.
I think it's a personal decision to plunge in and do what's necessary. When you realize how bad the problem is, you can't simply remain behind the scenes. You have to get involved.
My own situation, like running for elective office and being as involved in politics and having written thousands of blog posts, people are like, "Why don't you run for something? Why don't you run for something?" My wife said, "Please don't run for anything while our kids are still in public school."
Yeah.
And as long as they're in public school, I will not run for anything. And then after they're out of public school, we will have the conversation again. But that's my situation. She isn't politically active, but she's also a school teacher in a different district. And there are pressures that would be put upon her that I will not ask her to assume just because of my activism. So I do what I can do. I blog a lot. I talk to people. We do this program. We do everything that we can up to that line. So for people who can cross that line, if all they are is intimidated, I think it's important to talk about that. I don't know what the answer is exactly. I think everybody has a point at which they're so offended by what's going on, that they've decided that that's their last straw and they're going to go do something. We can continue this discussion in the next segment if you want to stick around.
Sure.
It's up to you. Okay, we're going to run long. This is Grok Talk. We will be right back with a bonus segment with James O'Keefe. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Yeah, baby!
When asked whether she still supports Obamacare, Senator Jeanne Shaheen said,
"Yes, I do continue to support the law. We're beginning to see some positive results."
how can Senator Shaheen say we're seeing positive results when 22,000 of our neighbors have already lost their health insurance? What's worse, the Boston Globe reports the state's only health insurance provider radically reduced the number of hospitals in their network, forcing some people to drive over an hour for lab work, even when there's a hospital within a few miles of their home. When pressed about lack of access, Shaheen said,
There are some hospitals that are not covered, unfortunately, and I certainly hope that's going to change.
Jeanne Shaheen promised us we could keep our doctors and our healthcare coverage. Now she hopes we can get to a local hospital? Call Senator Shaheen at 603-647-7500. Tell her we need more than hope. We need leadership. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
All of the music on this program comes to us through Creative Commons licensing from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers, not necessarily those of CNHT, GrokTALK.com, or anyone else for that matter.
Grok Talk.
Oh, feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Grok Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
All right, we've got James O'Keefe in the studio, and we're not going to let him go yet. We're going to run for an extra segment on Grok Talk. Welcome back. It is still Saturday, the broadcast day, Saturday, December 6, 2014. We are, as always, brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and GraniteGrok.com. James is here, and we started talking about how to get people to get past their fear, to move forward, what's their point at which they can make a decision to become an activist, to become a citizen journalist, and to start to ask questions and confront people about the things they see going on in their state, local, or national government that they think are wrong, or that actually are wrong in many cases.
You know, and they can start out writing letters to the editor or commenting on the newspapers or on TV station blogs and blogs like ours, and some of them do. And some of the more pithy people we find on our blog, we say, come and join us.
We do. We've had commenters in studio. I can tell you how I started. After 9/11, I noticed that things were a little weird, so I started learning things about government that I had never been taught in public school. I educated myself about the process, and on the way discovered that I was actually a conservative. I started commenting anonymously in places like Red State, where I began to see a lot of people who had some of the same thoughts and ideas and were expressing them, and I looked at how they expressed them, and I'd always been somebody who communicated very well through the written word. At one point, I eventually started my own blog here in the state on WordPress. Within a couple of weeks, Jane Aiken, who is part of CNHT, she's one of the directors, found me and invited me to become part of New Hampshire Taxpayer Radio, which was their radio program at the time, 2 hours every week. They needed a board operator. I had the experience. I went down there and started doing that. A couple weeks after that, I got invited to start writing at a local blog, political blog, right and left. It was a little bit more well-read than I was, just by myself. And within a matter of weeks, I catapulted myself from complete obscurity to somebody people knew and who were beginning to read. And I became pretty successful at that. I pissed off a lot of Democrats. I irritated a lot of people, and I discovered that I liked it. And I was like, ha 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 ha. You know, I'm out there trying to discover what the truth is and reporting my observations on it, and people are responding. And it wasn't a drug, but I was like, well, I need to keep looking at things. I need to investigate in my own time, you know, around my full-time job, about the things that I see. And then people started sending me tips and telling me about things that were going on. And then I would learn how, and, you know, you went from not knowing where to go to being able to look up a bill, check somebody's house ratings, find out their connections, see who voted from their house, you know, and all these things. And you begin to pile them all together and you post them. And it creates a level of outrage, which is what we're attempting to do to get people to become active.
Well, you guys have a lot more transparency in New Hampshire than in most other states.
That's true.
You guys are talking about what relationship with the bill. In some state capitals, there's like one reporter, and they're lazy, and they print what the press release says. So, you know, if you guys existed in Louisiana, I mean, they probably wouldn't put you in jail or it'd be a better place to live. But I think this whole conversation really, again, has to come down to, you know, whenever I meet with the donor or a recruit, it's what are they going to do to me when I go out and ask the tough questions. And in our case, it's been interesting because this year, wrapping up 2014, in the beginning of the year, Andrew Cuomo, New York State governor, tried to come after my organization and go audit me and harass me in regards to employment issues. And there's so many regulations in the state of New York that it's impossible not to break one of them, right? Because there's a tangled web they weave, and this is tyranny. And if they want to get you, they can. But
Mark Stein jokes about New York and saying he doesn't go there because he's out of compliance with the Bureau of Compliance.
Yeah. That's right. We paid so much. I mean, we pay an enormous amount of money just towards unemployment insurance and whatnot for our employees. And we get this audit letter. I take the letter. I send it to all the reporters I know. We make a federal case out of it, and Andrew Cuomo backs out of his coming after us. So a lot of people say, James, you're the one that got away from the tyrants. Like they can't really shut you down now because you've passed the event horizon. It's gotten to the point now where if they do come after you, and it's obvious, then you know it's gonna hurt their cause. I wouldn't take that for granted because certainly they can manufacture some crime and in the future. But for other people aren't so lucky. You know, people like Chris Hennigan. Yeah. People like Joe Barton.
Well, I mean, and Chris was coming into the country. He was isolated at an airport, and as a Philadelphia, TSA is not nice people, and he was just turned around, sent back out, and said, you know, we don't like what you're doing. Basically, we'll call it a violation of the terms of your visa. Goodbye. Yeah. And don't apply too soon. You know, and then they tried every which way to catch him out. On the other hand, I think there is a case of getting to critical mass. I think your team has reached that point. I like to think here we've reached that point because there's enough of us in enough walks of life and spread out enough that if they try to pick us off, we'd be going public all over the place.
That's right.
You know, causing trouble.
I think you guys are at that point here in New Hampshire. I think, yeah.
You know, like when they tried to pick off Joe Barton, who has worked for you and is as a friend of ours. You know, we had the rest of the story that the other media didn't publish, and we put that out right away. We issued a preemptive strike, effectively.
Yeah, I think you guys are the rare exception. I think in New Hampshire, it's a relatively small community, which is why what Richard Head did to Joe Barton is so surprising. That he thought he had and he certainly tried to do it with me. And then Breakthrough. And maybe Richard Head's people are listening to this broadcast right now.
They might be.
Hello, Attorney Generals. In Breakthrough, they
well, they said when they came to my house looking for you that they listen to us, they read our stuff. We watch your speeches, we read your posts. I mean, they obviously consider us a threat. They consider you a threat.
The Republican Party considers us a threat.
Well, and so they should, because the Republican Party is not guarding the Republic.
They did. Just as an aside, James, somebody working as a proxy for the Republican Party tried to get me fired from my job for opposing the apparently rushed through party choice for chairman of the state party. There was a race. There were candidates. We had chosen ours. They had theirs. Happened to be Jennifer Horn. And we were writing about problems we saw with Jennifer and what might happen if she was, raised to that position as state party chair. And so somebody at a different blog with a lot more or less readers than we had put up a post about how I was being a misogynist and these other things. And then all of a sudden that post appears at the president of my company's office with a suggestion that they fire me because I hate women. And of course I never said anything like that. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I explained the story to him, and he said, "All right, just be careful." He was really cool about it. Small company, but it's everywhere. It's in your own party. If you're in a party, and you have to not be intimidated. When the Democrat Party started writing press releases about me, I started writing about their press releases about me, and they stopped. Mm-hmm. And that's where my threshold is. And in this state, it's easy to do that. And a lot of people are in much bigger states and places like Louisiana where they can't do that.
GrokTV.